Hope, thank you so very much. We continue to track the controversial use of flock cameras in our state and right here in the coastal bend.
Supporters say automated license plate readers are helping law enforcement solve crimes and locate missing people. However, as more cameras pop up, Texans are asking more questions about right to privacy.
Our Lexis Greene joins us live in studios, helping us better understand how the law sees this use of technology. Lexis.
Good morning, John Thomas. Good morning, Barbie. As you mentioned, we do have a guest here in First Edition. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, you know, this conversation, the topic of the flock cameras, they're not new, but it is starting to gain some attention now. And to find out they are here in Corpus Christi, tell us your thoughts on this.
So the flock cameras are automated license plate readers, and basically what they do is they record the movements of vehicles and they can track them for some period of time. The reason that's problematic is because it implicates the question of basically can the police search or otherwise use information without a particularized question as to whether this person's committing a crime or that person is committing a crime, and how long can they use that information, monitor that information. So a lot of questions about how that can be used.
That is a very good point. So it's kind of like without a warrant or something, they are just kind of keeping a tab. It is important to note that Flock is just a brand name. Like you mentioned, they're automatic license plate readers, so there is going to be different brands out there. I did pull up a map, and they are here in Corpus Christi. They're on the JFK. They go as far as Ingleside, Portland, Sinton, Southside. I mean, they're here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the issue with it really is that from a public policy standpoint, they're really kind of dichotomous positions, meaning there are supporters and there are people who are against it. The supporters naturally say, look, we can use this as a means to curtail crime. Somebody commits a bank robbery, we can track him or her, figure out who it was, and that is good for the public safety. The problem is if your movements are being recorded, we now know where you worship, where you go to school, where you traverse often, and there may be a completely innocuous reason that you're doing that. But if law enforcement thinks for some reason you're a target, now you have all this information amassed against you where they don't have a particularized need, where they would otherwise have to go to one of our venerable federal judges and say, hey, judge, issue a warrant so we can make sure that this is the person that we're actually investigating. So that's really the problem here is it going to meet the Fourth Amendment requirement for a reasonable search and seizure? And that's really the legal question.
That is a great point. So what can people do to protect their rights? I know other towns have already created petitions and they've taken it to the legislative. What are your thoughts? We're not saying we're here nor there, but if, you know, as far as privacy goes.
So I think that's the seminal question. I think it's really a political response, meaning you've got to lobby your local city council, your county commission, whomever's in charge of your local government to say your opinion on the flock cameras and whether they should be used. But the issue is we as citizens don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy in public and things that can be viewed from the street. So your license plate is something that they can always view. Really, this is less a question of viewing it and more what information can be amassed and how can that information be used. So I think if you're against these cameras, the way you do that is you lobby your local government and say, I have a problem with this. I think this is creating a surveillance state. We don't want these in our local communities. But as you can imagine, law enforcement is going to push back and say, look, we need an opportunity and a way to curtail crime and to monitor people's movements where we think they may have been involved in a crime. So that's the push-pull here.
Exactly. Another huge point we talked about on the 5 a.m. hour on First Edition is, according to CCPD, they do not use them and they do not access them, but our state troopers do, and they did give us some success stories, which we'll have that story on our website. But thank you, Matt, so much for joining us. You really did help kind of answer some of those questions about privacy. We'd love to have you on more as we continue to learn a little bit more about this and the conversation, all that good stuff. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you want to mention?
No, except that there was a case from the Supreme Court at the end of June called Chartres versus the United States talking about geofencing. It's not exactly the flock issue, but right now in front of the Supreme Court recently decided there's a new emerging technology issue. And that's what you see with emerging technologies. You have an over 200-year-old constitution that couldn't contemplate technology the way it exists now.
Thought flock would be a thing.
Exactly, and the question is, how do we resolve some of those emergent issues? So I think this is a phenomenon that we'll continue to see play out in the courts.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to toss it back to you guys in studio.